Mel Kiper Jr. gives us a little bit of pre-scouting combine nuggets, plus here from the Condor, Madd Maxx Crosby. That plus more on Friday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for February 21st, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, or you're checking us out on the YouTube page, you know we appreciate both. The show continues to grow each and every day. That's because of your support, your passion for the Raider Nation. Of course, because on the YouTube page, the job that my man Ari's doing behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good each and every day. He does a lot of work, so we definitely appreciate that. We want to shout him out. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you ever want to be a part of the show, as many of you do, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. As a matter of fact, I will close out the show and close out the week. Segment number 3, hearing from you. Calls, texts, plenty of feedback. We'll do that. Segment number 3. Segment number 2, Maxx Crosby. Once again, I got an opportunity to catch up with him, which has been really cool this offseason so far. I've seen him at the Pete Carroll and John Spytek press conference when they were introduced to the media. Saw him in New Orleans the week of the Super Bowl. And then I saw him on Thursday as he opened up his Papa John's in Las Vegas, one of the 20 Papa John's that he's a part owner of, which is awesome. I did not know that until we actually got into the conversation, but got to catch up with him again. It's always great to hear from the Condor, so you'll hear from him coming up in segment number 2 as he was a guest on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness, on Raider Nation Radio 920. That's segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes, and what we're going to do is get you ready for the Scouting Combine in Indianapolis that's coming up next week by hearing from my guy, Mel Kiper Jr. He was also a guest on my radio show, but on my ESPN show, Joe and Q on ESPN Radio from noon to 3 Eastern, 9 a.m. to noon Pacific time, and he's a guest each and every Thursday. This is the cool thing. Every single Thursday between now and the draft, Mel Kiper Jr. is going to be a guest on my show, which anyone who knows how much I admire and respect Mel Kiper, one of my goals when I started working at ESPN was, can I do a show with Mel? Well, now I get to do a show each and every week. Well, Mel's a guest of mine, so a big honor for me. I respect the hell out of what he says. Doesn't mean that it's gospel. Doesn't mean that it's gold. Doesn't mean that everything he says is going to go. No, but the dude's been doing it for a very long time. He's a wealth of knowledge, and I'm really blessed to have the opportunity to catch up with him for a few minutes. So I took a few little sound bites from what he had to say on my radio show and thought that they were something that can get you ready for the Scouting Combine. As you know, it's draft season. You know it's the off season when we start deep diving into the Combine, mock drafts, and more. And obviously around here, we've been doing that for a while. But you'll hear from Mel Kiper in a hot minute after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'll tell you more about them later on in the show. But let's go ahead and not mess around. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Again, Mel Kiper, who's going to be a guest on my radio show, Joe and Q on ESPN Radio, every single Thursday at 12:30 Eastern time. As a matter of fact, you can make that appointment listening. That's one of mine that I can't wait to get to that part of the show. I hate it because it's the end of the week, but I can't wait to get to that part of the show so I can talk to him each and every week throughout this course of the process of the draft and seeing how things are going to shake out. He's got his new mock draft 2.0, coming out on February 25th, which is the official first day of the Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. So my first question to him on Thursday was, well, how do you attack the Combine? No one's coming up, knowing how many prospects are going to be there, knowing the drills that are going on at Lucas Oil Stadium. You know, how do you attack the Combine, and what do you feel its overall significance really is?
Q, Jonathan, great to be with you guys. Right, I just have a little note that I always going into the Combine of guys you expect to run well, you expect to be the strongest, you expect to be the most athletic, who's going to be the freaks. Medical is going to be important, interviews are going to be important. But sometimes the interviews, you get a report, you say, I'm going to lower him because of an interview with a team, but 32 teams have different opinions. So you got to be really careful of the interview process, which you hear there. But certainly I think going into the Combine, I try to get a little idea in my own mind as who I expect to do certain things. And when they don't, either good, they're a little high, better than I thought, or not as good, you have to factor in then the pro days coming up. These guys will run again. They'll test again. Free agency is going to impact all these mock drafts. But in terms of the Combine in general, I had just a running list of guys I expect to be the guys we're raving about, and then we have to even see if some of these guys even going to work out. So the Combine's an interesting piece of the puzzle, but it's not the end-all, be-all.
So I just wanted him to reiterate what I've been trying to say, but I think sometimes when a guy like Mel says it just kind of carries a little bit more weight. The Combine should be used something that you confirm what you already believe. Right, so if you watch the guy, say Cam Ward, if you watched him all season long from Miami and you believed a certain thing about him at the Combine, you should be able to see if he does go out there and throw and compete, and that checks the box. Oh, yeah, that's what I saw all year from him. Now, if you saw one thing from Cam Ward, I'm just using him as an example, and then all of a sudden he goes out to the Combine and he's completely different and it's a lot better, and you know, even if it's a little worse, be like, wait, hold on, something doesn't really match, right? Because remember, it's not football that they're doing in Indy. It's the underwear Olympics. It's a lot of the, you know, the interviews, the medicals, all that's super important. But to all of a sudden persuade you to that's the player that my favorite team should go draft is not a good recipe. I always like to go back to Bruce Campbell. Remember when the Raiders drafted Bruce Campbell in the 4th round because he was a combine warrior? Right, he was the best lifter. He can bench press 225 pounds the most. He was the fastest 40 runner for a big lineman. Right, I mean he was able to do the 3-cone shuttle. Right, he did all that. Right, every drill. He was a workout warrior. When he got on the football field in between the lines when it mattered, wasn't worth the salt. At least the Raiders drafted him in the 4th round as opposed to, you know, being a 1st or 2nd round guy. But Bruce Campbell's always the guy I always refer back to, ultimate example of a workout warrior. So a question that's been asked to me quite a bit is, well, what is this draft going to be known for? Last year it was 6 quarterbacks taken in the top 12. What position groups are the deepest in this year's draft? That's what Mel Kiper speaks on right here. Check it out.
I think running back, you can wait on that a little bit. I know people are trying to force running backs up. Why? I mean, we're dropping Genty down, which I'm not. That's one guy I have to figure out because he's so highly rated. But as we say, well, Kiper hates running backs in the 1st. I don't like running backs in the 1st, but I love running backs. I like running backs from the 2nd round on, and I think you can get some really good ones in the 2nd round. I think the guy that people forgot about is Dylan Sampson from Tennessee, LaQuint Allen from Syracuse, some guys that are really good players that are going to go maybe drop down just a bit. So this is going to be a year where you're going to see a 5th round running back be great in the NFL. Maybe a 6th round running back. You're going to see that 7th round like Pacheco was. Maybe even an undrafted guy. But defensive tackle is another position really strong and really deep where you can get a defensive tackle probably in the 3rd round like a Ty Robinson from Nebraska. Maybe an Omar Norman-Lott from Tennessee. A Jordan Phillips from Maryland. Maybe in the 4th round. A C.J. West from Indiana. One of the more underrated players in this draft. Maybe in the 5th, 6th round. So I think defensive tackle on that side of the ball is really deep and really strong.
Running backs and defensive tackles. And that's the reason why I've been very adamant in saying as much as Ashton Genty is a special talent, you don't have to go and get him at 6. There's a ton of running backs in this draft. Now, Vinny Bonsignore, who I have a lot of respect for, he'll be in Indianapolis as well. He said on my radio show on Thursday, he was watching some film of Genty, and he thought that he had some LaDainian Tomlinson type tendencies and some traits. Now, if you think that Ashton Genty is LT or the next LT or can be LT-like, that's a HOFer. That's a gold jacket. That's a Hall of Famer. Maybe you do take him at 6. I respect the hell out of Genty. I watched a lot of Boise State football. I'm here in Vegas, so UNLV is part of the Mountain West. So I watched a lot of Genty, had him on my radio show on ESPN multiple times. Great young man, stand-up dude, quality running back. I don't know if he's LT-like, but that's what Vinny said. So, I mean, I guess if you're having a conversation, if you're John Spytek, if you're Pete Carroll, and you feel like he has Tomlinson-type tendencies and you think he can be anything close to him, then maybe you do take him at 6. Me, I think that you can get him, not him, but you can get a running back that's going to be really good. And I think Pete Carroll and company are going to get a couple running backs in this draft. So I wouldn't go and get him at 6. I would want to get an impact player if it's not a QB, a defensive tackle, an offensive lineman, a top flight cornerback. I'd want to get one of those position groups if I'm not going to get my quarterback at number 6 or with my 1st round pick. But again, unless they trade back and collect a couple other picks, but I don't see them doing that. I just don't think that that's where they're at right now with their team. I think they want to get the best blue chip player at that number that they're at whenever they get their opportunity. But again, that's just me. So defensive tackles and running backs are the deep position group in this year's draft, which is good because the Raiders need defensive tackle depth as well. Now, a question that was thrown at me by my guy, Hardcore Raider, he actually asked on my radio show about quarterbacks not throwing at the combine, if that's a red flag or not. So we thought we'd ask Mel about that. It was myself and Jonathan Zaslow. And we asked, Cam Ward hasn't made up his mind if he's going to throw at the combine. Shedeur hasn't said if he's going to throw at the combine, right? Should quarterbacks throw at the combine? Is that a red flag? Is that a concern? Is there something to lose for them? What are your thoughts on quarterbacks throwing at the scouting combine?
Well, you got to look at it this way. If I'm a quarterback, there's no way I'm throwing at the combine. There's no way. If I'm an agent, no way I'm advising a quarterback. What's there's only a downside to it because you're with receivers you've never thrown to. You see how they operate. You got to listen to and do what they tell you to do. In a pro day, you dictate policy. Okay? You have your receivers. It's on your schedule, on your timeline. It's what you want to do. Nobody tells you what to do. They tell you at the combine. So I'm not throwing at the combine. Now, Justin Herbert threw at the combine. Looked great. He still was the third quarterback taken behind Burrow and Tua, but he looked good at the combine. But at the end of the day, pro days don't mean a lot for quarterbacks. I don't think the combine means a whole heck of a lot. Most of these teams know who they like and who they don't like a quarterback. I know prior to pro day they do. I know for a fact that's the case because they already knew who they were drafting before some of these quarterbacks threw at the pro day. So at the end of the day, I think pro days, combine for quarterbacks are an overrated piece. But if I'm a quarterback, I don't want to give them any red flags. I don't want to give them no negativity involved in this process. So if I'm going to nail it, where am I going to nail it? I got a better shot at the pro day than at the combine. So that's why I'm skipping the combine. I'm going to go there for medical and interviews, nothing else. And a lot of these quarterbacks don't even run now. They don't even give you a 40. They don't even show you. I don't think Shedeur's going to run a 40. I wouldn't. Bryce Young didn't. Others quarterbacks didn't. So now the trend is quarterbacks only want to just throw at the pro day and leave the rest to your imagination.
I have to admit, that answer from Mel Kiper Jr. about quarterbacks not throwing and him basically saying, if I'm a quarterback, I'm not throwing at the scouting combine. Hopefully quarterbacks don't hear that and quarterback agents don't hear that, because all of a sudden one of the big time drills that go on and the showcases that happen at the combine is going to be non-existent if the quarterbacks aren't throwing. And I get the top guys like Cam Ward and Shedeur, they're already solidified as top cornerbacks, or quarterbacks, I should say. But, the others, I would think that they would want to go out there and show something and compete. But when Mel said only thing they can do is lose and throw up a red flag on why they shouldn't be drafted, and I guess if certain scouts are starting to look at it like that, then that would be a reason not to throw. But again, that goes back to my point A about the combine should be able to confirm, check a box of what you already know. If a quarterback can throw in a game and you saw him in college on Saturdays, on Thursdays, or whatever the case may be, you saw him throwing, he can throw. I don't care if he's not hitting his wide receivers that he's never thrown to in Indianapolis. I just like to see guys go compete. For me, I'm a competitor. I just like guys going out and competing and putting it all out there and saying, yeah, you know what? I want to win at everything. Because I feel like if they have that mentality at the scouting combine, they're going to have that mentality in practice. If they have that mentality in practice, they're going to have that mentality in the weight room. If they have that mentality in the weight room, they're going to be like that in film study. If they have that in film study, guess what? All that's going to translate to game day. That's just me. I never played professional football. Really didn't play football until I was an old man. 30-something years old before I actually hit the gridiron. So what do I know, right? It's just my opinion. But Mel, again, has been covering the game for a long time, been doing this draft thing for a long time. His advice is I wouldn't have my quarterback throw at all. He has nothing to gain. So there's that. So that was kind of surprising to me when Mel said that. But again, that's why I asked the questions and let him give his answers. Now, a lot of people have Cam Ward as their number one quarterback, and a lot believe he'll be the first one drafted. A lot of people think he'll go number 3 overall to the Giants. He might go number 1 overall to the Tennessee Titans, but most people expect him to be the first quarterback taken. Mel Kiper believes Shedeur Sanders is the number 1 quarterback. And here's why.
I guess what I'm seeing is I'm old, okay? And, I look at old school and the guys that have been successful, and people say, well, you look what's happening now in the league. You got to be able to move around. Well, Shedeur can move around well enough. And I look at Tom Brady, Joe Burrow, Peyton Manning. I look at old school quarterbacks, and they're still – Brady was winning a Super Bowl at 44, doing it his way. 40-time vertical meant nothing on these quarterbacks. It's about, can you read a defense, number one? Can you throw with anticipation? Can you hang tough in that pocket? Can you see things that nobody else does? And that's where Shedeur, I think, has an edge over all these quarterbacks. He sees things. He has an innate ability that's not something you can coach or teach. And accuracy is there. The ability to throw left, throw right, and deliver the ball to the receiver who can do the maximum with a football. He has magic in that arm in terms of what he sees and how it relates to that arm, even though he doesn't wow you over with arm strength. He's not going to run a 40 because he's not fast, but he can get you a 3rd and 8 first down. So to me, Shedeur, I love the kid. I love everything he's about. Can you imagine him dealing with all the pressure and the hype? And it doesn't faze him. So if you go to wherever you go in the NFL, I don't care where you go, you're going to be expected to be really good early on. Shedeur, I think, is equipped to deal with that kind of pressure and that kind of expectation.
So that's Mel. And again, many people like a Daniel Jeremiah, like the Field Yates, like the Matt Millers, the Jordan Reeds, Louis Riddick, who we heard from on yesterday's Locked On Raiders podcast, believe Cam Ward is quarterback number 1. And I guess it's pick whatever flavor you choose. I think both QBs are really good. That's the good thing. I think that they can both go out there and play at a high level and win. And that's what you need. You need a guy who's a winner, who wants to be a winner. But that was Mel Kiper's thoughts on why he has Shedeur as number 1. And it goes back to a conversation that we had from the text line. Well, if Shedeur, if you're looking for a mobile quarterback, why is Shedeur in the conversation? He's not mobile, but everything that Mel just said. And yeah, he's not a runner. He's not going to go to the combine and run the 40. He's not that guy. He's not fast. But if 3rd and 8's there and he sees some grass, he'll go get you 3rd and 8. Right? He'll pull a Patrick Mahomes. If you need to get, into field goal range, somehow, some way, he'll get you down the field, right? He can run, scramble, get out of trouble. He can keep plays alive. He can move around in the pocket a little bit, but keep his eyes down the field, keep the vision on his playmaker so he can deliver them the ball. And he has the arm. He has the ability. He knows how to shift his body, rotate his weight, and boom, deliver that ball in a dime to his playmakers while still, like I said, having his eyes down the field and still, scrambling. So that's what I really like about Shedeur and his ability. The final soundbite from Mel, and again, he was a guest on my radio show on ESPN Radio, Joe and Q, is about free agency. And who is it in free agency that could affect this upcoming draft the most? Because we get free agency before we get the end of April draft.
I think it's Darnold. I really do. I think it's Darnold. Is he back at Minnesota with McCarthy coming off the injury? It's kind of an unknown what JJ will be in the NFL. They had high hopes, but now in that way Darnold played while he struggled in those 2 games where they needed him to play his best. He didn't. That lent itself to the thought that, well, maybe they'll let him go. Well, if you let him go, is McCarthy going to be the guy? When Darnold can go somewhere else, he's a young quarterback. He's not 30 years old yet. So, and he's coming off a successful year with O'Connell. So to me, if Darnold moves on, where does he go? If he stays in Minnesota, it makes it a moot point. Then all of a sudden, the Raiders are out of the equation. Adam Schefter talked about them maybe for Darnold. Tennessee, other teams could go Darnold. But I think Darnold stays at Minnesota. It makes it easier for everybody when you start projecting where these quarterbacks will go. And certainly makes it easier to project Shedeur, because I still believe after losing the quarterback last year, Michael Penix Jr., by standing pat, will the Raiders stand pat where they are if Darnold's going back to Minnesota, or will they make a move, or they just hope that Shedeur falls in their lap? I think that's going to be the interesting team because of the division they're in with Knicks and Herbert and the great Patrick Mahomes and that AFC. They are under the ultimate amount of pressure to get a quarterback somehow, some way this year.
Sam Darnold. I told Mel after the interview, please keep Sam Darnold away from Vegas. And again, I mean, if it's a 2-year deal and he's just, a true bridge guy, okay. But if it's a 4-year deal, he's at $100-something million fully guaranteed, I'm out. I'm out on that conversation. I just don't trust Sam Darnold because we haven't seen it. So it's not that I'm necessarily hating on the guy. I don't trust the guy. And I don't think the Raiders are in a position as an organization to make a move and try to gamble on a guy that hasn't done it more than once and in great situation. Minnesota was a great situation. Really good head coach. I know he's a really good head coach. He's coach of the year. Really good wide receiver, Justin Jefferson. Many could say he's the number 1 wide receiver, if not the number 1, number 2, right behind Jamar Chase, right? He has other really good wide receivers as well, right? Young cats, right? So, I mean, there's so – oh, by the way, an offensive line, that's important. Oh, I forgot, a run game, that's important. Yeah, he had all that going for him. Played indoors for half the games there in Minnesota. So he had a lot of ideal situations going for him. And I don't know if the Raiders – actually, I know the Raiders aren't set up like that right now. So, again, another reason why I'd stay away from Sam Darnold, but that's just me. But as you heard from Mel, he could be the one that affects the draft more than anyone, especially for a team like the Raiders. If the Raiders were to go and sign Sam Darnold to a 4-year deal and make him their franchise QB or anticipate him to be the franchise QB, they're not going to grab Shedeur or Cam at the top. right? They're probably going to go get a position group player, and that's fine. Go get a dominant player, and maybe they'll draft a quarterback later on down the road, second, third round, whatever the case may be. And if he works out, he works out. If he doesn't, he doesn't. Right? So I just, in the spirit of Pete Carroll, with his way he likes to have competition, I can't see them paying him a boatload of money and then having some guy that could possibly take his job there in competition. I don't see it. I know it can happen. I just don't see it. So I just don't think it's a very good recipe. But again, that's just me. So that's what I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast news and notes. Just sound bites from the great Mel Kiper Jr., who again will be a guest on my radio show each and every Thursday, 12:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio, Joe and Q. It's been a fun couple weeks of doing this new show. And, I'm just hopefully just keep this party rolling, this electric circus that we like to call it. Coming up in segment number 2, once again got an opportunity to catch up with Madd Maxx Crosby, the Condor, this time at his place. No, not his house, his Papa John's. That is his place because it's his Papa John's, his ownership, and just had an opportunity to catch up with him and talk about, when he knew that he had the opportunity to be a special player. Right, and just kind of talk about his journey. Not necessarily, didn't talk about his contract, didn't talk about, the Raiders making a bunch of moves and he's going to be a Raider for life and any of that. Really more just talked about him. You'll hear that conversation in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of this show, and that's FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on that than FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. And with FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. A lot of folks love using FanDuel for the live betting feature that gives you every moment of game of excitement, right? You can, back your team late for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3. Don't hit LeBron. Don't use LeBron for a clutch 3. I didn't realize this. The Lakers lost to the Hornets on Wednesday night. It was the only NBA game that played. It went down to the wire. LeBron had 2 open looks from 3, and he missed them both, and that's fine. That happens. I didn't realize with those 2 missed threes at the end of that game, he is 1 for 29 since being with the Lakers on last-second shots, go-ahead or game-tying shots with like 4 or 5 seconds left to go or in overtime. I didn't know that. I did not realize that stat until early on Thursday. I was like, whoa. I don't count on guys to make that shot all the time because that's a tough shot, and LeBron is a hell of a player, clutch player. 1 in 29 since joining the Lakers on those shots. So I'm just telling you that if you do a prop bet on a player late in the game, don't bet on LeBron. But right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to get into the conversation I had with Maxx Crosby at his Papa John's on Thursday. Went a little bit long there in segment number 1, so good thing this one's a little bit shorter here. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Let's not play around. My conversation from Thursday on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness, on Raider Nation Radio 920 with Madd Maxx Crosby, the Condor. Max, we spent the last couple hours talking about you and when we knew that you were him, right? And this is what I mean by that. And this is not to gas you up or anything. This is just, I remember, and we talked right after you broke your hand in 2019 in the preseason game, and you wanted to get back out there.
Yep.
And I thought, that's cool. That's heart. That guy really wants to go after and get at it. I didn't know you were going to be the face of the franchise. I didn't know you were going to be one of the big faces of the NFL, but you're here now, and it's only 2025. When did you know that you had that him in him?
Honestly, like when I was a young player, especially, in college and everything like that, I was truly just trying to be the best version of me on a daily basis. You know what I mean? I didn't have any type of prediction of, what it was going to transpire into be. My dreams and my goal has always been the same. I never had a plan B. I always wanted to be a superstar in whatever I do, and I want to be the best at what I do and help people and give back at the highest level. And I've truly just fully dove into that since day one, and I've been just a work in progress and trying to improve on a daily basis. And, I try not to look too far back or too far ahead, and I just stay in the moment and stay present to the highest of my ability. And that's how I'm, able to be in this position now, but I know it's not, the peak. I got so much more to do, so much more to improve on, and on and off the field. Being here, it's being a part of the community and giving back and all those things are tied to one. So I say it to my guys and my tight-knit circle all the time. We want to be a lead across the board, and that's what we push for on a daily basis.
Well, you're definitely a lead across the board, and we're here at your Papa John's.
Yeah.
How wild is that?
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. It's a blessing. There's so many people I could thank, but having, being a part owner of 20 Papa John's in Las Vegas and many more to come is a dream come true. You know what I mean? I feel like, you talk about a lead across the board. I want to, business is a big part of what I want to continue building, off the field. And people talk about wealth, and you could have a lot of money, but not know what to do with it, not have a direction. But I have incredible people. Obviously Doug Pack here, who's the majority owner here. We've had a great relationship, and we've come together, and we're doing a lot of great things, and there's many more things to come. But Papa John's is a big part of it. Obviously, being in Vegas is a big deal as well, and we're just getting started. So yeah, man, it's surreal to say the least, but. I got to thank all the people around me, because without them, I wouldn't be able to, be in this position. Wouldn't be able to learn about, the business side of what I got going on. So, forever learning and improving, just like as an athlete.
Where did that come from? You wanting to know the business side, you wanting to be more than just an athlete. That if you are successful and have a really good career, you're going to make a lot of money, but also wanting to do more. Where did that come from? That want to?
Yeah, honestly, the guys that inspired me the most are, the Shaquille O'Neals, the Floyd Mayweathers, the Dana Whites, even Rick Ross, in franchising. He's got so many stores and places around the country. That's always something that's piqued my interest, and I've just been able to get into the right rooms. I'm not going to give myself all the credit, but also you got to put yourself out there. You know what I mean? You got to be able to go in some rooms and meetings that you're not necessarily comfortable in to get the best out of yourself. And I've been able and been blessed enough to meet some of the best people in business on the planet, and guys that know a lot more than me. And that's honestly the key to it, is just having people around you that are smarter than you. And for me, it's just about constantly learning and evolving, and those people have helped me in a lot of ways. So, yeah, I want to be like I said, a lead across the board and truly create an empire for myself and my family, and give back, to any community that I have, any type of involvement in.
Did you think when you were, I'm going to buy you a drink, did you think you'd be here now and serving up drinks, you're serving up pizzas, you're opening up your businesses? Did you think this is what was going to be Maxx Crosby?
I did not. I was just a young kid trying to get it right, and I'm still have that mindset. You know what I mean? That's the thing. I'd never get comfortable. All the the attention, the money, the glory, all that stuff that comes with it is awesome. But for me, I still feel like that kid trying to prove himself, and I truly mean that. I'm not just saying it. That's why I feel like I've been able to continuously grow over the years and hit new levels, and that's what piques my interest. You know what I mean? Is I know I've done some good things so far on and off the field, but I know there's a whole nother level I can go to, and I feel like to the day I die, I'm gonna have that mindset. So as long as I'm on this planet, I'm going to continue to try to be the best version of myself and improve across the board.
Maxx Crosby is with us here. We're at Raider Nation Radio 920. We're in front of his Papa John's. We're excited about this meet and greet with Raider Nation. I said that in 2021, Unique Ngakoue had joined the team. And I remember at training camp, I kept saying, damn, Max looks fast. Max looks really fast. And I didn't know everything that had gone on in the offseason. But I was like, he looks really fast. To me, that's when you separated yourself. You became really an elite guy that year. How big was that year, and how much did Unique Ngakoue help out in the path?
Yeah, honestly, after that, my second year in the league, which was the COVID year with no fans and all that, I was coming into a season fresh out of rehab. You know what I mean? Like straight out of coming from California right into a training camp, which is probably the hardest thing I've ever had to endure in my life. Probably 15 pounds overweight, dealing with multiple injuries. I was playing through a torn labrum, a broken hand, all these things, and I never quit. I played all 17 games that year. I'm getting killed on social media and in the because I had a big rookie year. And I knew what I was dealing with, but it was a secret to everybody else.
No one else did, yeah.
Nobody else really knew. So I was taking those, taking the punches on the chin and just continuing to move. And going into that offseason, I remember like that feeling on the field, like, damn, I don't feel like I could make every play on the field. I don't feel like the best version of myself, and I made an agreement with myself that I'm never going to feel like that again. You know, I've made it this far, and I didn't have my life cleaned up. You know what I mean? I wasn't doing all the right things. I wasn't fully dedicated as far as my nutrition and my off-the-field patterns and all the things that I was doing. So after that year, I got my surgeries, and I went to a nutritionist. I went to our strength staff. I went to all the mentors in my life, and I'm like, listen, I'm all in. Like, if I made it this far, why can't I be on that level of a guy like T.J. Watt or Myles Garrett? Why can't I be in that conversation? I've already made it this far, and I've, you know, been drinking and doing all these other things, and that was when it all changed for me. I went all in, and I've never looked back since, and I feel like I'm only getting better. So, yeah, I love being doubted. I love being told I can't do this. Yannick Ngakoue, another one, you know, when he came in, like, me and him were locked in from day one. You know, I had a ton of respect for him and what he brought to the game and what he had done up to that point. But just his tenacity and the way he approached every day, it made me a better person. Quentin Jefferson, you know, Darius Philon. I mean, there's so many guys I can name. Arden Key was another one.
Remember Arden.
Guys that were, you know, that pushed me, and I pushed them. You know what I mean? So every day, me and Yannick were really going head to head. And he was, you know, he was like 245. I'm like 260, and I'm like, I'm gonna beat you. I'm going.
Yeah.
And it was back and forth all the time, but it made us better. And it was competition. And Rob Marinelli deserves a ton of credit. Travis Smith, all the guys that were in that room, they made each other better. Malcolm Kuntz. A young Malcolm Kuntz.
Yeah.
And he was small, too, 245, flying around. So I'm like, I got to be on that level. You know what I mean? So we all just pushed each other. And like I said, like ever since then, I was like, I made a pact with myself. Like, I'm going to maximize everything I do in my life, and I'm not going to look back. It's not going to be perfect. I'm not perfect to this day. I still have things I know I can get better at. But I'm constantly aware of those things, and I'm constantly looking for improvement. And that's what I feel like is the key to success.
That's why Raider Nation's here. That's why they love you. That's why they're
Amen.
super excited to meet you. They're super excited to
Absolutely.
be here. Give it up for Maxx Crosby, y'all. Give it up
Appreciate
for
you
Maxx
guys, man.
Crosby. Hey, man, that's fantastic. If there's one, before I let you go, if there's one message that you could pass along to Raider Nation, maybe encouragement, something that you work through your mind every day to keep pushing you, what would you tell someone?
Yeah, I would just say the future's bright. You know, we've gone through a lot. You know, I've been here 6 years. Some of the fans have been around for 40, 50 years. Yeah. At the end of the day, Raider Nation is one of a kind, and I truly love everybody involved in it, the ups, the downs, the positives, the negatives. At the end of the day, it's about bringing a championship back to the nation, and that's truly what's on my mind every single day. So super fired up.
Really happy for Max, man. I mean, obviously all the success that he's had on the field, he wants to have more success. He talked about T.J. Watt. He talked about the elites of the elite, right? He knows he's got more work to do, which is great. Just happy for him, and also all the success he's having off the field. He was meeting and greeting with all the fans that came to his Papa John's, shook their hands, took pictures, signed autographs. It was really cool. Saw a lot of Raider Nation show up and show out. So I thought that was really cool, and I thought you'd want to hear from Maxx Crosby as I talked to him on Thursday on my radio show. Your calls and texts are coming up next to close out the show. Segment number 3 is on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Ohio Raider in the 419, calling to talk about what Louis Riddick from ESPN had to say, the way he was very adamant about Cam Ward when he was on First Take. Really glowing thoughts on Cam. Here's Ohio Raider who wants to speak on it as a Hurricanes fan. Ohio Raider in the 419.
Hey, what up, Q? It's your boy, Ohio Raider from the 419. Just calling to add a little bit about the Cam Ward piece that you did. I thought that was an excellent piece that they did on him. You know, Q, I've been a big Hurricane fan, and one of the things is why they haven't been relevant over the years is because they didn't have a quarterback. They've had a quarterback over the years like Ken Dorsey, Bernie Kosar, Jim Kelly, Steve Walsh, Vinny Testaverde, Gino Torretta, Craig Erickson, just to name a few. Now, all of a sudden, Cam goes to the U, and they're relevant again. It just shows his leadership qualities. He also, like you said, when he came to practice, they recognized him as a leader. I don't know if we'll have a chance to get him, but I just enjoyed the piece at the Canes fan. Also, just want to say the only thing in watching his game that I think he really needs to work on is because he believes so much in his arm and buying time, is throwing the ball across his body. He threw several interceptions this year because he was throwing the ball across his body. But other than that, he's him. He's the dude. I think he'll still need some time to play, but I just want to comment, appreciate Louis Riddick talking about him, because as a Canes fan, we didn't get back relevant again until we had that dude. We probably even would have made the playoffs this year if our defense wasn't so bad. He was up 21 against Syracuse. We probably would have been there. But just wanted to just say that. Want to tell you, Q, thanks for all you do for the nation, too. So go Raiders.
Thank you for the call, my man. And yeah, that is a laundry list of great quarterbacks that did some great things at the U, right? Cam Ward definitely made them relevant again for sure. Really good quarterback. Had them in the mix. You're right. They didn't have a defense that was worth the salt. But, man, he was a really good quarterback, really good asset. The guy has plenty of college games under his belt, 5 years of college games, over 18,000 yards, over 150 touchdown passes in his career. That is an accomplishment in itself. So he's going to be a really good one. I think he's going to be the first quarterback taken off the board. I think at the latest by number 3. But, you know, we'll see. Obviously, we'll see how it all plays out. I think that Cam Ward definitely has a lot to like. And, again, if the Raiders were to get him, that's not a bad thing either. But thank you so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Chipsy in OKC. Hey, Q, it's Chipsy from OKC. I'm down the draft defense first round, then Dart or Dylan Gabriel. I'm out on Milroe. My Sooners tore this cat down when we played. He went 11 for 26, 164 yards, and 3 picks. Hashtag Boomer Sooner. Side note, I talked with Trey Taylor at the Integris Heath Jim Thorpe tour. He's a really good dude. Hope he gets some playing time this year. Raiders. That's Chipsy and OKC. And yeah, Trey Taylor, the young man out of Air Force. He was a safety that the Raiders drafted in the 7th round last year. Didn't really get much burn. He was on IR for a while, but definitely could see him going out there and competing for an opportunity to get some good playing time during training camp and preseason and all that. I think he's a bright young man. I had a lot of glowing reviews about him. As far as Milroe in that game against the Sooners, that was all bad. When they had that game against the Sooners, I couldn't believe, as an Alabama fan, that people had the nerve to still say Alabama should have made the playoffs. You know, I was like, how? They got waxed, right? They went to Oklahoma, and Oklahoma, no disrespect to you, Oklahoma wasn't good, right? They weren't good, and Oklahoma embarrassed Jalen Milroe. 3 picks, like you mentioned, had an awful game. Oklahoma took his lunch money and ran with it. They didn't even run. They took his lunch money and walked away with it. Like, what you going to do about it? Nothing. So if the Raiders go defense in the first round, as long as it's a blue chip player, right? It could be the offensive tackle. It could be a defensive tackle. It could be a cornerback, whatever the case may be. The Raiders need dudes. That's my bottom line. They need a quarterback. They do. At some point, they're going to have to get that guy. But the Raiders need dudes. And if you're sitting there picking at number 6 overall, you have an opportunity to get a dude, a guy who could potentially be a difference maker. And, oh, by the way, you've got 10 draft picks that you're working with, at least. And you got over $100 million probably in salary cap space. You can start to put this team together pretty quick, fast, and hurry. You just got to make the right picks. So if it go defense, they go defense. If they get their quarterback, then go defense, cool. They get a quarterback and a running back, then go defense, that's cool too. Just get really good blue chip players. That's it. That's all I got. Chipsy, thanks so much for the text. I appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Aaron from the 203, calling to talk about Ashton Genty, the running back from Boise State, as a potential draft pick at number 6. Here's Aaron from the 203.
Hey, Q, it's Aaron calling in from the 203. Still need to do the roster comparison to 2016. I mentioned in one of my many ramblings that I've sent your way. Just haven't had time. I've been caught up, catching up. So what I am calling about today, though, is kind of regarding the sentiment I'm getting from a lot of the calls and even Raider Twitter about Genty at 6. Okay? And what I'm about to say is not to take away from how good of a prospect he is. The dude runs like a madman. He bounces off people like it's nothing. He's a phenomenal-looking prospect. Okay? And I'm not going to talk about, oh, well, he played in this conference. He did that. He looked good against the higher-end opponents, too. What I am going to say, though, is something you've said. There's too many good running backs in this class to justify spending a top 6, number 6, top 10 even, pick on a running back. I don't care that Jahmyr Gibbs is as good as he is, and he went 12, and it was critiqued then and there. Him and Bijan were the cream of the crop of that class, right? There's Genty, and then there's a tier, and then there's a couple guys, and there's a tier, and then there's a lot of guys, right? S, A, B. I would be more than happy with 1A and a B, right? Or 2 Bs even, if that's what it came down to. If it meant that we got an elite talent elsewhere at 6, because the fact of the matter is that running back value in the NFL is not as high as maybe it should be, right? You don't need to spend the top 6 pick when you can get Judkins or Neal or Johnson late in the first, early in the second. I've seen mocks that have Judkins going in the third. A little ridiculous to me, but further pushes my point. Gadaboo, probably a late day 2, early day 3 guy. You can get multiple starting caliber running backs in this class without spending that number 6 pick. Get a corner, get a defensive tackle, or trade back. We want to stick with this talk of, serious on serious entertainment purposes only. You know what would be for entertainment purposes only? The Cowboys trading up from where are they at, 12 or 15 or whatever, them trading up to number 6 to get Genty. That would be entertainment purposes only for the Cowboys, but for the Raiders, that would be serious, man. You could still get a top 15 prospect. You could still, and then accumulate draft capital on top of it from a team that's going to do well this year. Yeah, that would be serious for the Raiders, entertainment purposes for the Cowboys. Stick with that theme for you. But my point is, this running back class has so much value, you don't need to. You don't need to buy the Charger, just buy the damn Camry. It's going to work just as fine. It's going to serve the job just as well. That's it for me, Q. Love what you do. Appreciate it. Go Raiders.
Aaron, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And I mean, I like Ashton Genty a lot. Like I said in segment number 1, I just don't want to see the Raiders draft him at 6. I just think there's a ton of really good running backs in this draft. You can get a true blue chip, like I was just saying to Chipsy. You can get a true blue chip player at number 6. You can get a running back later. I mean, unless you think that's LT, like Vinny Bonsignore said he has LT-like tendencies and traits, that's different. But D-tackle, D-end, offensive tackle, cornerback, I mean, those are some powerful positions, man. And obviously, if you can get a quarterback, go get that as well. I just don't know. But Pete Carroll loves his running back, so maybe if he sees that Marshawn Lynch-type guy that he thinks, okay, I could go win a Super Bowl with this guy, right? He can lead us to the promised land. He can have a Saquon Barkley effect on the team like he had on the Eagles. Then, maybe you go and do that. But I just think that there's too much there to just get Ashton Genty at number 6. But that's just me. We'll see how it all plays out. Got a text, a short one from Jay Peasy in the 209. He said, I realized Max was that dude when he broke his arm his rookie year, but still dogged it out and played like a madman. That's when I knew he was special. That's Jay Peasy in the 209. That's in response to what I was saying on my radio show when I was outside of Maxx Crosby's Papa John's. I was asking Raider Nation, when did you know that Max was special? When he was more than just the 4th-round pick that broke his arm in the preseason or broke his hand in the preseason game, went back and got it taped up and came back in and showed heart. But when did you know he was next level? Like, oh, this guy's special. For me, it was the 2021 training camp when Unique Ngakoue joined the team. And I said, man, this guy looks faster. He looks faster than I've ever seen him. And that's when we end up finding out that he went and got sober. He cleaned up his life, as you heard him talk about in segment number 2, right? He had all that was going on. And you heard what he had to say about 2021 and Unique Ngakoue, what he brought to the table, and how so many people pushed him. But that for me was the difference maker. That's what turned Madd Maxx Crosby into who he is today. For me, that 2021 training camp, that going from what he went through in the offseason that nobody knew about to training camp and into the regular season. Let's get one more quick call in. Jacob in Wilmington, North Carolina. He's calling to talk about the draft and what he really would like to see as it pertains to the silver and black. Here's Jacob in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Hey, Q. Hey, Ari. It's Jacob Mazza from Wilmington, North Carolina. It's been a while since I called in. And I know all of Raider Nation is talking about Cam Ward and Shador. And I'm just going to be honest with you. Why wouldn't I be? But I see the first overall pick being Cam Ward to Tennessee. The second pick being Abdul Carter to replace Myles Garrett. The third overall pick's going to be Shador. Fourth overall pick's going to be Travis Hunter. And then it all kind of rides on the 5th pick. What does Jacksonville do? Do they trade? Do they take the offensive tackle? Do they take the defensive tackle out of Michigan? if they do any of that and they don't take that offensive tackle from LSU, then we are doing the right thing, because Will Campbell, Wilson Okung I think he was a 6th overall draft pick. I just want to get back to building this 12 personnel. I'm talking and talking and talking and talking, and we're all talking and talking. Yo, we got to get down with the 12 personnel, and I just don't really care about a quarterback. I don't. Like Pete Carroll said, there's only 3 or 4 special quarterbacks ever in the league. So let's build around the 12 personnel and let's run that rock. Let's tote the tater, baby. And let's get busy with our tight ends. We spent a 2nd and a 1st round pick on it. We got to replace our left tackle. So if we get Will Campbell, man, we won the draft. So, anyways, Raider Nation, hope everybody's happy and healthy, and just win, baby.
Big Jacob, thanks for the call. I appreciate you. And look, if it falls the way that you just described, and the Raiders have the shot at the top offensive tackle, Will Campbell out of LSU, or their top defensive tackle, Mason Graham from Michigan, that's a win. That's nothing to complain about, right? They're both dudes, right? They could both really help this team with their identity, right? The trenches, build it from the outside, or the inside out, I should say, right? At some point, you're going to have to get your quarterback, right? You can put it off. The Raiders have done a good job of doing that. They can put it off, but at some point, you've got to get your guy. Now, if you're building the team up and really building it around and getting a lot of quality players, okay, I can sign up for that. But at some point, man, you got to just be like, all right, this is it. It's QB. I was hoping that was going to happen last year because I knew how special Jaden Daniels was. It's just reality was that the Raiders weren't going to get up to number 2. Washington wasn't coming off that because they also knew how special Jaden Daniels was. So, we'll see. We'll see. Again, Pete Carroll said that, there's only a few elite quarterbacks. He's right. But you still need a really good quarterback, and the Raiders need to upgrade their quarterback in their quarterback room. So that's what we got time for on today's show. It's going to do it for this week as well. Still got a text from Connor in Florida, a call from Seattle where I didn't understand the name, but the story is really good. So maybe I'll get a call back because it was like the phone cut out a little bit. We'll get that on Monday's show. Also, Daniel Jeremiah from the NFL Network had a conference call almost 3 hours long on Thursday, all draft, pre-scouting combine. So Monday, the show will come to you live from Indy. Well, probably Tuesday's show will come to you live from Indy, but we'll be preparing for the scouting combine. So on Monday's show, you'll hear a lot of the Daniel Jeremiah cuts. We might go 2 segments long with Daniel Jeremiah cuts just about different prospects, different players, quarterbacks, defensive tackles, running backs, all that, just what he had to say on that conference call. I'm still in the process of cutting it all up, so we'll have that on Monday's show, and then we'll be ready to go. Deep dive straight into it, the scouting combine there in Indianapolis, and that's when you know it's really go time for the offseason and the NFL draft. So definitely appreciate you, Raider Nation. It's been another fun week. I definitely appreciate all the feedback on the text line and the call line, 707-654-4693, the Locked On Raider Podcast voicemail line. We'll get back to more of your feedback on Monday's show as well. So have a fantastic weekend, Raider Nation. Till Monday, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.